Right, Commissioner Treese and Chair Harrington, we are live and ready to go, and you have a quorum, and I can keep my eye out for Commissioner Willie and Commissioner Rogers.
Great. Thank you very much, Clerk Moss. Good morning. We are just starting the November 9th work session for the Washington County Board of Commissioners. Our Chair Harrington is remote, so I am going to be running the meetings today, but she is with us. So at this point, I'd like to welcome, as I mentioned, Chair Harrington. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Nafisa Fye and Commissioner Jerry Willie, I see, has just joined us. And I don't see Commissioner Rogers yet, but we'll keep an eye out for him. So at this time, I'd like to start with leadership communication, or excuse me, board communication. So I'll get the
go first.
Oh,
I don't often have the opportunity to just participate and go first. So
go for it.
There isn't much new that you guys don't already know about, because we had a full day on Tuesday and of last week, and I just had a bunch of different internal meetings on Wednesday, and then Thursday we had our roundtable together. So and then started my vacation on Friday. So I'll be on vacation through the rest of this week, and with luck, attending the AOC annual conference next week. I do have the monthly chair mayors meeting next week. We'll be talking about the supportive housing services plan that we're familiar with, and that we'll be hearing more about later today. The Metro Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee had a retreat this past Monday, I think it was, that I wasn't able, as in yesterday while I was on vacation. No wonder I couldn't remember it. And there's another one next Monday morning that is the set of two that I'll be participating in. There was an interesting article that they shared with us as that committee is really focused on trying to make sure that they're comfortable with how to assess equity. I shared that with Ms. Tillman and Ms. Angie to get their take on it before sharing it here. So, and also seeing the discussion at the second retreat next Monday. So stay tuned. I'll be sharing that later. So thanks. That's it here from Tucson, Arizona.
Thank you, Chair. And who would like to go next?
I'll go next. Good morning, everyone. Hello, Chair Harrington from Aloha, Oregon. Yeah, I think last week was very busy with the ordinance being passed. I met some constituents, hookah, folks who want to be exempt. And then I had a few constituent meetings where people are looking, navigating the county system, just having a lot with the legal, DHS, people going through homeless situations. And, you know, I think our constituents look to us as a pathway to navigate the system, but when there's a legal issues and situations that are complex like that, it's hard to know what to say and what to do. But I think giving a sympathetic ear to people has been really a lesson learned for me, and a hope for others, just to listen to their situations and to say, I'm not really sure how I can help you, but I'm here to listen, and my heart goes out to you. So that was challenging last week, hearing our constituents and a lot of the situations people are going through. And one of the constituents shared his 16-year-old, because of the situations and navigating the system and dealing with all kinds of barriers, she entertained the idea of killing herself. And that was really hard to hear from a 16-year-old, so yeah, a lot of emotions, a lot going on last week for me in terms of with our constituents, but she's okay. Our father assured me they're getting help. They're very grateful for Washington County housing them and providing house to them and shelter. So they wanted me to extend that gratitude to all of us on the board and to Tanya to say thank you for giving us a place to call home. So I'll continue to listen and reach back to those few constituents. But I also offer them to reach out to you all, because I think everyone besides me have a lot more experience here and might have a different perspective and different way to navigate some of these challenges. So if you do hear from constituents, please help them. That's all. My update.
Thank you, Commissioner Fye, and thank you for meeting with those constituents and our residents that are in need. So much appreciated from my perspective. Who would like to go next? I see Jerry reaching.
Well, I think I'm, oh no, Roy's there. So I was going to say, I think I'm it. Last week, attended a ROMAC, our Rural Roads Committee meeting, got an update from emergency management on, the what if scenarios if we have the big one, and a lot of really good information there. I've offered to share that with the bank's city council, because they were asking those questions a few weeks ago. And then later in the week, actually later in that day, I went to attend the Northwest Act and shared the same information. Lots of really good information came from our emergency management team. So I will be sharing that with a variety of other organizations, just because it's, like I said, it's interesting to know the what if scenario. So make sure, I guess, if the big one happens, don't be there, wherever that is. But anyway, also this Thursday, as we all know, is Veterans Day. I'm attending a North Plains event at 11 o'clock. So if you would like to come out, they do a great job, and they have a great facility out there. So that's where I will be on Thursday. Yesterday, we were interviewing 2 additional commission members for the Public Safety Committee Commission. And so that was, we had 5 candidates. So you will hear more about that when that information is communicated. And of course, that will come to us sometime in the next month or so for confirming what our recommendation will be then. And then kind of coming events, I'm going to Hampton Lumber tomorrow to meet with some folks regarding the forestry management plan, and get some other information that'll be really interesting. I think, Pam, you're going with me or I'm going with you or whatever. We're both going to go together there tomorrow, so that'll be good. And yeah, just I think we get to go build some bunk beds on Friday. So out at the Cloverleaf. So yeah, it's a busy week. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Rogers, good morning.
Good morning to you as well. I guess when we see each other so often, it's hard to think of anything too exciting that's coming up. Yesterday, I spoke to the members of the Tualatin Chamber regarding tolling, and tried to explain that there's really 2 different projects going on, what they are, and some perspective. They appreciate it. It's supposed to next Tuesday, we're not meeting. I don't know why Eric Schmidt wants to do it, but he says, I'd like to interview and talk to you about some perspective over some 37 years. So I guess I'll go do that. I have a few constituent meetings with folks who are concerned about a variety of things, as you might imagine, but I'll leave it at that. There's nothing really earth-shattering.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Well, my report, I'd like to mention that Commissioner Faya and I met with Sam Dessou. Nafisa, you didn't mention that, but I thought it was a really good meeting. He's the new TriMet director, and we met with him because of just wanting to introduce ourselves, but also to talk about transit issues in urban unincorporated areas that we both represent. He also brought along his staff, J.C. Venata and Tom Markgraf. It was really a good meeting, and it was nice to kind of get some grounding. I have met him previously, but it was interesting to hear what he considers his top priorities for the agency as he moves forward. It was also a good opportunity for them to hear what our issues are in Washington County. Sam is coming to the board meeting on November 30th to talk as well. So we'll all have a chance to talk to him then. I had a very good conversation with Commissioner Vega Peterson and the organizers of Getting There Together campaign. It was really kind of a post-campaign debrief, talking about what went well, what didn't go well, and what, with hindsight, what changes we might have made. So that was a good meeting. I also met with Representative McLean. I took the opportunity to introduce Representative McLean to the WEA Transportation Committee Chair, Frank Angelo, and the new executive director there because of her role in the I-5 bridge. So it was an update for me with Representative McLean on the bridge issues, but also an opportunity to introduce her to some key stakeholders in the county. And again, another looking over my shoulder, I met with Cole Merkel on the Here Together Coalition. They're trying to ensure that business is at the table, and they partner with them as we move through projects on the SHS issue. So I'm just letting you know that you'll probably be receiving the same calls that I received from Cole Merkel. Yesterday, I went on a visit down to Sherwood. It wasn't quite the tour that Commissioner Fye got, but we did have a very nice talk with council members Kim Young and Tim Rosner and the new city manager, Keith, and his last name is, I'm not remembering it right now. But one of the things I want to compliment Tanya on is that Keith talked about the fact that one of the first phone calls he got when he took the job was from Tanya, welcoming him. And he said it was really significant to him to receive that call and to welcome him and to open the doors for communication with the county. So thank you, Tanya, for doing that. This next week, well, actually on Thursday, I leave to go back east to see my grandchildren. So we're all kind of over the country, but I will be there just till Sunday, and then I return to go to AOC. I'll be down there Monday through Thursday. So just letting everybody know where I'll be, but obviously I'll be online and available. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to leadership communication. Ms. Angie.
Good morning, Vice Chair Therese and commissioners. I almost stumbled over my words because I already feel like a creature of habit of how I greet you each week, and with the chair being on vacation, but coming in remote today. So pleased to announce that Rodney Rhodes will be joining Washington County on the 15th as our interim chief financial officer. And so I will ask that he attend our board meeting on Tuesday so that he can introduce himself. He comes with a rich background in cities, counties, and utilities as a CFO. So I'm really looking forward to him joining the team. And so Jack Leon can start to firmly step into the Clean Water Services position. And once again, I appreciate the partnership with Clean Water Services during this transition. Commissioner Willie had mentioned Veterans Day. In addition to the North Plains celebration, there is also a celebration in Hillsborough. If you want to lace up your sneakers at 8 a.m., there's also a 5K. And so you can get to the 11 a.m. Ceremony in North Plains or Hillsborough by 11 and still attend the 5K run walk as well. Relative to COVID statistics, we are staying stable since last week. We have 5 employees who are known to be off of work, 9 employees who are close contact, but they're fully vaccinated and they're asymptomatic, and employees known to be in quarantine who are unvaccinated after being a close contact are 5 employees. So that's the same number as we've seen last week. The county is hosting several vaccination clinics. Happy to say, I know my daughter will be getting her first shot this weekend. She is 10, so she is looking forward to that as much as you can at 10 to getting a shot. But we are actively promoting those opportunities to our community, as well as I know the school district is also. And that concludes my weekly update.
Well, tell her congratulations from us, please. So, Mr. Carr.
Good morning, Vice Chair Therese. As you probably heard, the federal government Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued their emergency temporary standard last night for mandatory vaccinations for all employers with 100 or more employees. The vaccination requirement doesn't go into effect until January. But we are in kind of an interesting position. As you probably recall, government employees are not covered by the federal OSHA. So technically that rule does not apply to the employees of Washington County. Oregon is one of 23 states that have state plans. State plans do apply to government employees. The Oregon OSHA is required to adopt their regulations within 30 days of issuance of the federal regulations. Oregon can adopt regulations that are stricter, but not less strict than the federal regulations. So the federal regulations provide a floor for what we will have to comply with. We anticipate OSHA will adopt something at least as strict as that and perhaps stricter. There's a question as you probably heard, the federal OSHA requirement has a testing alternative so that an employee can either be vaccinated or submit to weekly tests and wear a double cloth mask that fully covers their face when working. Oregon OSHA does not have to provide for such an alternative. So we on staff are working on an implementing procedure modeled on the one that the commission adopted for healthcare workers. But obviously we can't do anything until we see what the state requirements are going to be. So right now there is no requirement for Washington County employees. We anticipate that there will be, and that we will know shortly when state OSHA adopts their rules. And we will, of course, keep you informed with everything we hear as this situation develops. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Diane.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair Therese, and good morning to the Board of Directors of Clean Water Services. I just wanted to update the board on how the passage of the infrastructure bill on Friday brought some good news to us. There's $500 million of an influx to the Bureau of Rec's Safety of Dams program, which is really great news. Our team is meeting with the Bureau of Reclamation today and tomorrow for the annual project update. So we really look forward to what that additional funding could mean to us. On the COVID front, we have one new positive case. The employee's doing well. So that's all for my update for today, but thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on, any comment about the board agenda for today? We have the consent agenda. We have a couple public hearings, On the consent agenda, there's 1 item from Clean Water Services, 5 items from LUT, 1 item from Health and Human Services, and 1 item from Support Services. So I don't hear that there is any request for changes there.
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers?
I will share with you my continuing concern on Ordinance 879, I believe. Yes, it's the Tigered urban renewal planning. I have no problem with the larger question of whether or not that would come in as part of the urban planning area. I continue to have significant issues in my mind about the extension of Tile Flat Road. For those of you who know this particular area, the only way in and out is either on Shoals Ferry or to hit Roy Rogers Road. It's congested at best. I've tried to have some conversations with the city, and maybe I think it would be fair to say that they have other priorities than that. To me, the whole issue in urban planning area, much like we saw in Tualatin on Basalt, is to have a complete street system before we create additional problems. So what am I suggesting? Nothing other than maybe make some comments and say, I certainly hope that they would emphasize the importance of that particular project and a complete street system before we have a major developmental issue out there and lots of traffic problems that it will squarely be on the county's shoulders, because these roads are all county facilities. So I just want them to be partners, much like Tualatin stepped up to the plate on the Basalt Creek and said, yes, that's an important project to us. So that's my comment.
So Commissioner Rogers, I will watch for your comment then.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Is there anything else? All right, moving right along, we have had a change to our agenda today. Formerly numbered item 4, the bicycle facility selection for Springville Road, phase 4 has been removed from the agenda. And I believe, Clerk Moss, correct me if I'm wrong, that number 5 is moving up to the time slot of 1 p.m. I guess I'm looking at it. It has been moved to the 1 p.m. time frame. Correct?
That is correct, Madam Vice Chair.
Great, great. Just wanted to make sure that everybody saw that change as well. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Carr for the reapportionment update.
Thank you, Vice Chair Treese. Good morning. Can we bring up the presentation, please? I'm not seeing it. There it is. Okay, this is a brief presentation on the reapportionment process. With me today is Amanda Garcia-Snell, who will be talking a little bit about a proposed plan or process for public participation, and Dr. Steve March, who is our consultant. Dr. March was the former auditor from Multnomah County, and he was responsible for redistricting their 4 commissioner districts, as well as a former Oregon State representative on the committee charged with redistricting in 2001. An expert in redistricting who has worked on redistricting at the state of California, including federal voting rights preclearance process and for local government. So Dr. March will be presenting some of the substantive things. I'm going to present the overall process, and Ms. Garcia-Snell will be talking about public participation. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline that we're looking at. The charter has specific deadlines for reapportionment. And just a brief word on the word reapportionment. This is what we're actually doing is redistricting. Reapportionment is where you reapportion seats, a fixed number of seats among various places, like we do with congressional districts. This is redistricting, but our charter uses the word reapportionment. So we have to call it reapportionment, even though we know that's not technically correct. So you'll hear me use the word reapportionment, and someday in the future, when we have a minor charter update, we will change the word to redistricting. We'll put it on our list of things to do. So step 1, the commission will be asked to appoint a county official to determine population distribution. That starts a 60-day clock. The official must report back to the commission on whether or not redistricting is necessary. We move then to step 2. which is the report, and decide whether or not redistricting is triggered. That is a 60-day clock, which we anticipate to end March or April in 2022. Then we begin step 3. That's the substantive process of redistricting. That's where we'll have extensive community input and input, of course, from the commission on what we're looking at in terms of redistricting, if redistricting is required, and we do believe it's going to be required. There is no time limit on step 3. So we can take as long as we want. As a practical matter, it's clear that this redistricting will not apply to the 2022 election, of course, because that's already started. The first day that people can file for the 2024 election is September 8th, 2023. So the absolute drop dead deadline for completing this process is September of 2023. I will say, though, that that's the worst case. Staff would prefer that this be completed by the end of 2022 to allow our election team to work on doing things like redrawing precinct boundaries and informing voters. So the more time they have to do that ahead of the 2024 election, the better. We don't intend to rush the process. So it should, under the timeline we have drawn out, we can do a thorough process and complete by the end of 2022. Once that we submit the plan to the commission, the commission has 90 days to adopt a ordinance adopting the new boundaries. Next slide, please. So the key questions we're going to be asking the commission today is whether or not the general time frame is appropriate, whether our proposal for selecting a demographer is appropriate, and the community engagement process proposed by the Office of Engagement of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. Next slide, please. So the redistricting criteria, as you probably recall, there was a charter amendment in 2014 that reduced the allowed discrepancy among the districts. It used to be 110%, and now it's 105. After redistricting, no district can be more than 103% of any other district. Because there was a 2014 charter amendment, the last redistricting was done in 2015. The preliminary analysis done by our consultant and our elections team suggests that at this point, redistricting will be necessary. One of the districts is likely to be more than 105% of the other district size. Next slide. This is the language of Charter Section 84. As you can see, you have to parse it very quickly. I had to read it 3 or 4 times before I could figure out what the timelines were. But you'll see that the commission district shall be reapportioned, and we've highlighted the word after, the decennial reapportionment of state representatives. As I've told you in the past, that process is still ongoing and anticipated to be completed by the end of January 2022, which is why you saw that our proposal to start the reapportionment process for Washington County will begin in February of 2022, because under the Supreme Court's decision, that should be the end of the decennial reapportionment of state representatives and state Senate district boundaries. Next slide, please. And I want to turn it over now to Dr. March to explain the general criteria for redistricting. Dr. March, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. For the record, Steve March, PhD, former state legislator and former Multnomah County auditor. These guidelines here are from the Oregon Revised Statutes on redistricting, and they're generally considered the appropriate guidelines for any kind of redistricting, that a district be contiguous. In other words, it is connected to the rest of the district. Utilize existing geographical political boundaries where you can, and not divide communities of common interest, be connected by transportation links, and be of equal population. Sometimes these come into slight conflicts with each other, and that's why there's some latitude in the exact number of population balance. So we also do not draw to a district to dilute the voting strength or of a language or ethnicity. So And I had some experience of this in California, working in a federal pre-clearance process of we had to report to the federal government on redistricting districts because there were 4 counties within California who had violated those voting practices in the past. So next slide. And currently, we've evaluated that the GIS staff and that are available do not have the capacity at this time to develop these proposals for us. In 2015, the county contracted with the Population Research Center at Portland State University to prepare boundary changes proposals as the reapportionment process goes on. So that's a decision point for the board. Any questions at this time? All right. Yes.
I have a question, Mr. March,
Yes.
Dr. March. Could you go back one slide?
Certainly.
And I just like a definition of what political boundaries mean.
So the political boundaries generally mean city boundaries, but there's a problem with using a city boundary, for example, as a district boundary, in that cities frequently change their boundaries as they expand. There are other political boundaries that you try to avoid splitting, perhaps maybe school district boundaries. You take those into consideration. All of these are as nearly as practical. So it's not a fixed line. Cities in particular, and even school district boundaries expand, sometimes into multiple areas. So it's all of these are sort of as a within reason. What would a fair or a reasonable and prudent person use as you're doing these boundaries? And where practical, let's say 2 cities come up to each other, that would make a very good boundary because neither one's going to give up to the other, most likely.
I asked the question because in District 2, District 2 has a portion of the city of Beaverton and the city of Hillsborough, our 2 largest cities. So it must have been a process in the last reapportionment as well. Then, thank you.
Right. Thanks.
I'd like to make a comment as well. Thank you for that explanation. This clearly says congressional and state legislative districts, and I can tell you, having been involved in the last 5, if not 6 of them here at the county, this process, other than the staff, which sweated blood to figure out all the demographics, was a real yawner. We simply took and said, what streets divide between districts? Let's make it a street, or tried to get as close as we could to the boundaries of common communities. And what I meant by that is that, and that's why in Pam's district, there's a little oddity in being in 2 cities, is we had to have population carve outs. You didn't quite have enough population. But my only wish, I guess, in this whole process is that we take a look, because I really don't care where the boundaries are other than at communities of interest. And so, and that to me is more not just the geographic boundary of a city, for instance, but what the city will become. And because they're rapidly changing, as you've mentioned, Steve, I mean, it would make sense to me that we try to sit there and say, okay, well, what's it going to look like from now to the next few years for the next division? Beyond that, and this is just Roy speaking, I could care less exactly where the boundaries are, because they're still constituents of Washington County. So wherever they are, there are. Keeping the areas of interest is the important part. And I guess if I were to be the micromanager king of the day, I could tell you off the top of my head where we probably don't square up boundaries very well with communities of interest. So anyway, that's my comments as you do your work.
Well, thank you. And I would welcome your input as to where the past lines didn't meet communities of interest, because that's probably more important than some of the, like, city boundaries, as you say. They tend to take in what they can at the time. So
Chair Harrington has a question.
Chair Harrington, you're muted.
Didn't take hold. Thank you, Kevin. I think one of the points that Commissioner Rogers may have been getting at is with regard to communities of interest, is one of the things that we are now operationalizing, not just in Washington County, but across the region, is the fact that the urban reserves exist. And so I don't want to see us splitting up those urban reserves. Rather, the IGAs for the defining those reserves that have been adopted already prescribe, for example, that the reserves south of Shoals Ferry Road go to Tigard, and those north go to the city of Beaverton. And there aren't that many of them. It's pretty easy to follow. And unfortunately, I pretty much know them by heart. But that's not something that is based on history, because it is something that had not yet been validated as of the work that the county did in 2015, but has moved forward, though there might be another legal challenge that I just don't remember. So I think that's a really important one there. The urban services agreements have also been a document that has been referred to through past efforts, and they have been updated as they tend to be over the course of time. So I don't know if those provide any instruction at all. So I just wanted to mention those two. Thank you very much.
thanks for putting that on record.
I have another question. Are special districts taken into consideration as well? And I'm thinking of like THPRD.
We certainly can. I mean, it's as you see this list and you start adding those layers, that you're more apt to have some conflicts and issues. So you try, to the extent you can, where you can, take those into consideration.
I'm not suggesting that they need to be. I'm just asking if they are. So,
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. March. If we could go on to slide 8, and Ms. Garcia Snell will take us through the proposed community engagement process.
Thanks, Tom. So Amanda Garcia Snell, Community Engagement Manager in the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. And I wanted to touch on the community engagement portion of this work. So our community engagement priorities, like all of our community engagement work, will be rooted in best practices and align with the county's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. For example, one of those is really working with the community to co-create the community engagement plan and contract with partners to help with the implementation of the plan. But additionally, we would like to really be sure to focus on culturally specific communities and geographic communities. And I think this also plays into the idea of communities of interest, as you've mentioned, Chair Harrington, so I'm taking note on that. So we're looking at a phased approach, and this is really in an effort to be mindful of the way that we engage community so that we aren't creating more burden with community partners and community in general. So the first piece of this would be to develop criteria and really work with on a high level criteria and conversation with community leaders. And we're hoping that to be able to work with our advisory council on racial equity, assuming that the timeline aligns with the activation of that advisory council. Then we will be, once we do that, we will also be looking to them to have recommendations about culturally specific engagement partners in the plan overall. And then we would be looking at doing more typical community engagement that we do. So contracting with community partners, co-create, co-lead engagement opportunities. And these, I have a couple of thoughts up here around culturally specific community meetings, really focused on in the community. Hopefully we can do it in person by this time, but really be in the community, led by the community, and in languages that people speak and read and all of those things. Then also I've put the CPO circuit. So that's just an informal phrasing of mine, but really, doing kind of a roadshow with the CPOs to make sure that we're hearing from them. We have thoughts around partnering with the library, with WCCLS to get out into the libraries to share information and make opportunities for people to provide their thoughts. And then also survey and map with a mapping component to that, so that people can really draw out, and so we're thinking about how to do that virtually, as well as have some in-person, maybe some physical maps at libraries or places where people might gather. Okay, next slide. And then I think back to you, Tom, and there's some community engagement pieces in here that I'm happy to provide a little more detail to if that's helpful.
Great, thank you. So this is just sort of a rough timeline without dates on the next slide, with the dates of how we're looking to do this. And as Ms. Garcia-Snell said, the key is we're going to seek community input both on the criteria that we should be asking about, and then the options that we ultimately developed applying those criteria. There was a thought that we didn't want to go to the community with fully baked options until we'd heard some input on what sort of options we should be developing and what sort of things we should be looking at. It's not yet to the level of a plan, but we're talking about process. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is a more detailed, and I apologize for the small print, but this is a more detailed layout of a plan that gets us to a decision by the end of 2022. And as you can see, it's fairly aggressive because if we say that the end of 22 is our ultimate deadline and our start point is February of 2022, we compress. So for example, that original 60-day clock, we're only planning to take about 15 days of it to get back to the board on the necessity for reapportionment, although some of that work is already in process. As you can see then, the step 3, which is the crucial unregulated step, starts in sometime in late February, early March. Chair Harrington, do you have a question? I'm sorry. Okay, I'll finish. So it starts in February or March, and then we go through, we've highlighted in bold the community feedback, community engagement options that we're looking at here. And of course, as you all know, those are the most time consuming because you need to give people time to think and work with you. So those are the things that may push this out. But the plan is to complete the reapportionment plan sometime in September of 2022, and then start the 90-day clock for the board consideration in October of 2022, with the first reading of the ordinance in November, second reading in December, and adoption in December. This could slip till January. As I said, our absolute drop dead deadline is September of 2023, but we're proposing a fairly aggressive timeline to make sure that we don't miss that, and to give our team the time to do the work necessary to make sure that we have a solid base for the 2024 election. Next slide, please. Chair Harrington, did you have a question now? Thank you. Can we go back to that last slide, please?
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Just a couple of thoughts here. One is, I want to make sure that if we refer to the end of December for board adoption, that we start using the date December 14th, because that's currently our last scheduled meeting of the year. So it's not like having a full month. So, and the other thing, I'll just say it here that I'm concerned about is I really appreciate the community engagement approach. I'm comfortable with the criteria having a month or so, but given the interest and engagement being in person as well, I'm not sure on that criteria. Oh, February to March. Okay, over 2 months. I think 2 months is the minimum. But then on the second one, community engagement on options, June/July. I'm concerned about that time frame for a couple of reasons. One is school graduations. Hopefully this will be the first year that we don't have to have a strange virtual graduation time period, but it'll be summer with kids fully back, hopefully a majority of kids fully vaccinated as well. So if there is a summer where we all may just go bonkers and totally enjoy very active summer of 2022 may be it. And I also really am internalizing the desire for that widespread community engagement on the options. So I'm thinking, June through September, because, and I know, going back to school is really intense, but because of the way it's landing, I think we may have to really plan for more of a 4-month cycle versus a 2-month cycle. But, I balance that with, especially with our LUT department, they have a graph for how much feedback they actually get in. So I just want to let you know that I'm totally open for this schedule to change based upon the feedback that comes in that first community engagement on the criteria. That may tell us, oh yeah, we do want to adjust the next community engagement plan or not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So these are the key questions we were going to ask the board. I just gave you them in the front, and these are the same questions. Are you comfortable with the time frame? And thank you, Chair Harrington, for your concerns, and we appreciate that feedback. And then are you comfortable with the proposed demographer, PSU, or do you want us to go look to some other way of doing that? And do you have feedback on the proposed community engagement process? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Are there commissioners that would like to comment, please? Commissioner Willie.
Hi. Yes, the community feedback engagement. Have we done that previously? I'd kind of like to know what that looks like. Yeah, and I think it's a good concept. I like it. I just have we done this previously?
We did in 2015. We reviewed that process. I think that we're always learning how to do this better, and with the board's focus on equity, we really need to rethink how we do these processes. But we did do a community engagement process in 2015.
Okay,
Commissioner Rogers may have more to fill in on that, but I remember Walt Peck was contracted to do some of that work, and I kept bumping into him in different community forums in person as he was presenting that information across the county. And I was attending meetings as the Metro District 4 commissioner in half of the county.
No, your recollection is a perfect. The one thing that we were at that time very adamant about, and that was before as well, is that this not be a political process. It shouldn't be at all. It should simply be one of numbers and communities of interest, and that's exactly how it played out. And that's why I think it was somewhat anticlimactic. Other people may have been uncomfortable with the process, but we said no politics. It didn't matter. We're all nonpartisan anyway, and it doesn't matter where people end up, as long as they end up in a community of interest, we're happy. And so it worked everywhere except for District 2. And it didn't work well there because we didn't have the numbers we thought were growth numbers that were out there, that Bethany and all that. We thought they'd be much higher. And so had to come, this is my political statement, I apologize, is we had to come into Beaverton and Hillsborough. And I didn't think that was a good idea, but I didn't say anything about it because, again, we had to get the numbers. But that was probably one of the areas. The other one is Garden Home. Probably should have went to District 2 because that's their community of interest. And I got parts of that. And I think when you find the numbers, you're going to find that the area I represent is significantly grown, if not more. So those are the edges. A little bit, Hillsborough had a little issue because of do you go north of the Highway 26 and if we'd stayed south, and that would have fixed District 2 and probably a little bit of South Hillsborough would have taken that into. So those were the kind of fuzzy, but it was all based upon numbers. So I'll stop. And Walt Peck did a great job. He really did in those days.
If there are no other questions, I have a question. Commissioner Fye? No questions?
No
Okay.
questions.
Thank you. Interesting comments, Commissioner Rogers. Thank you for sharing that. And Mr. Carr, my question is, do we take those issues of how district, and obviously I have a personal interest here, in how District 2 was designed into consideration for the future to maybe correct issues that didn't include communities of interest, those types of things? Is there a correction piece as well?
I believe you can do that under the charter. I think the challenge, of course, is we may be faced with the same issues in terms of numbers. And and my recollection is that there is one district, and I believe Commissioner Rogers is correct, it's his, that has grown substantially. But again, we're only looking at preliminary numbers. Dr. March, did you want to add anything to my answer?
Yes. The problem was in 2015, you weren't working with current population numbers, where we've got much better updated numbers as of now. So we start with better data overall, and getting feedback from all of you about what communities of interest belong together will help us in using the new data better.
And just to clarify, the reason that the data was out of date was it was the 2010 census, of course, that was the basis for the 2015 reapportionment because of the charter amendment.
Right, and I'd say in my terms, 5 years out of date.
Yeah.
Just like to say that I think all of us would agree with Commissioner Rogers' statements around this is not a partisan issue, and that I know for myself, I want to make sure that our redistricting meets the needs of all of our residents. That's the first priority, and understanding where those community of interests are and how to appropriately design to meet their needs would be my goal.
I'd just further comment on that. And I've done both political and non-political redistricting, and I much prefer non-political because you get to really take in the kinds of consideration around communities' interest and those sort of things, rather than some sort of political idea.
So I think what we need to do is look at these three questions and ask if the commissioners are comfortable with all. We can go through all three. Is everyone comfortable with all three? Can you give me a thumbs up? Thumbs up.
I'm comfortable with all the questions. I agree. And I've heard great things about Mr. March. Our auditor had nothing but great things to say about you and with this process. So I'm really excited to work with you, Steve.
Thank you, Commissioner Fye. Commissioner Rogers, did I see a thumbs up? Yes. Okay, and also from Commissioner Willie. So I think there's your answer, Mr. Carr.
Thank you so much. And I will note that Ms. Lindstrom, Celia Lindstrom, will be the lead on this. She's, as you know, she's left the county, but she's coming back to assist. She's taking a few well-deserved weeks off, so I offered to step in and help through this process. But in future, Celia Lindstrom will be leading us through this, and with the experience of having done it in 2015 as well. So thank you all. I appreciate your time. That ends our presentation.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr.
Mr.
March and Ms. Garcia Snell.
And I was just going to say thank you, Mr. Carr, Dr. March, and Ms. Garcia Snell. You did a great job. It's very informative. Thank you. Okay, on to our next agenda item, which is the Senate District 18 appointment update. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is always a good thing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trees. Good morning, Commissioners. Happy to be here to provide this update for you. So next slide. So we are undertaking this process because State Senator Jenny Burdick had resigned from the State Senate to accept an appointment from Governor Brown to the Power and Conservation Planning Council, which created this vacancy. So the vacancy was noticed to the board on October 30th, which started the process. So next slide. So what this process entails is once the resignation was accepted and notified to the Secretary of State's office, the Secretary of State has the responsibility and lead of notifying both all the counties affected by the boundaries of the Senate district and also the political parties that are involved. So in this case, since Representative Burdick was a member of the Democratic Party, the notice went to the State Democratic Party to host a meeting to select 3 to 5 nominees to send to the Board of Commissioners, in this case to send to you and Multnomah County Commissioners and Clackamas County Commissioners. So next slide. So basically the State Democratic Party has 20 days from October 30th through October 20th to select the 3 to 5 nominees to send to the boards for your advice and consent on the new state senator. Once we receive those names from the Secretary of State's office, the counties have 10 days to hold a joint meeting and make the appointment. If we fail to do so, then the governor has the power to make the selection herself. So next slide. So on this 30-day timeline, the state parties have their 20 days, so they are meeting following their bylaws prescribed within their codes. And during this time, the counties can meet and select a date and time that works for them. So I have been in coordination with Justin Black of Multnomah County in Chair Kafori's office and with Clackamas County in setting a potential date for this meeting. So, so before you, including your packet, was the draft meeting agenda, all the documents of the procedure of the processes of how we would go forward with this. So next slide. So we are looking right now at Monday, November 29th as the date at 3 p.m. in the afternoon as noted on the draft agenda. And so we are just waiting for the Secretary of State's office to receive the nominee list from the State Democratic Party, and then we can work with the adjoining counties to put out a press release and notice our ways to accept written testimony on the process of how we will move forward. Next slide. So this is the breakdown of the votes per the county. So in the counties where the registered voter is less than 1,000 people, the county receives 1 total vote for all of their commissioners. So in this case, Clackamas with their 5 commissioners have the 1 total vote with 0.2 because they have 587. Multnomah is the largest county, so they have 11.4 per commissioner, and Washington, we have 8.4. So, so I was notified by Secretary of State's office that it looks like they were going to designate Chair Kafori as the chair of the meeting, as Multnomah has the largest portion, and we'd support that in a role going forward. So that is where we stand today. So next slide. And so any questions that I'm happy to answer for the board. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. This question may be one that goes between you and Mr. Carr. Not, well, in this particular appointment, Clackamas County's Board of Commissioners has talked amongst themselves and thought with just one vote that they would send just one commissioner to participate. We have a similar situation with Representative Bill Post's reappointment process. I can't remember the number, but we as a county have one vote in that process as well. And I'm just want to make sure that we know legally, will that is that acceptable, or do we have to have a quorum of county commissioners participating in the appointment process? I certainly don't need the answer now, but we need to make sure we know ahead of time for this November 29th, so that we have a valid process for Senate District 18 as well as for the Bill Post position.
So thank you for that, Chair Harrington. So the process states that any commissioner is eligible to carry their votes that attends the meeting, but if a commissioner is unable to attend, they cannot carry over any of their votes. So if only one Clackamas County commissioner attended, they would only cast 0.2 of a vote. They don't get the whole vote.
Can you make sure that the Clackamas County Commission is aware of that?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I had two things. One of them has just been covered. I was going to ask the same thing. If the board decided on how they were going to cast their votes, could somebody do that? So yeah, we may want to double check that. Kevin, not that I don't believe you, I do, but it's an excellent question. The other one is it telephonic? Because to go sit and understand that you're going to be there for hours, and I'm seeing a head nod. Is it telephonic?
Yes, Commissioner Rogers, it does prescribe in the state law that is available by video, telephone, because if you recall, we did this process, Senate District 19, right. I believe you and Commissioner Terry were on the phone for that appointment.
We were. I just want to make certain that was still legal. You never know what's changed. But all right, thank you.
And Chair Harrington, you are right about the Representative Bill Posey in District 25. I received the notice of that, and for that, there is 2 Washington County voters that are affected by that district. So that does give the county the 1 total vote for those 2 individuals.
Are there other questions for Clerk Moss? Commissioner Willie.
I don't have a question. I just want Clerk Moss to know that I will be on vacation, but I will be attending by Zoom. And that is on my, that's already on my calendar. So I'll make sure that I queue up for that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Clerk Moss, you have 3 policy questions in your worksheet. Would you like to address those?
Yes, so those were just, is the board okay with the agenda as drafted? Do you want to talk amongst yourself about potential questions? I have been in touch with our government relations team, and they are standing by, ready to aid the commissioners if there was any specifics you wanted related to Senate District 18, and they're happy to work with you on that. And just, are you just okay with the process as it stands?
Comments from commissioners? I'm okay. Great. Okay, thank you. Clerk Moss, I just wanted to make sure that your policy questions were addressed. Are there any other comments before we move on? Okay. Thank you, Clerk Moss. It was very informative, and we're in an interesting season here. With that, we can close the work session. I want to make sure that we know that we go back to a different Zoom link for our board session, which will start in approximately 25 minutes, I believe, about 25 minutes. So I look forward to seeing you there. Are there any last, Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we have a sense of how long our board meeting could be? I mean, if it's short and by some conclusion gets done by, let's say, 11 o'clock or 11:15, are we going to have to take basically a 2-hour lunch hour to do that? Or could we slide the other one up?
I would defer to Ms. Angie regarding that. It looks like the board agenda is, we've got 2 public hearings. So, you know, it probably won't be as long as our last board meeting, but, it, you know, my guess is it will be more of a standard length. Ms. Angie?
So our 2 afternoon work session items are both 60 minutes in length. So Commissioner Willie, to answer your question, we will juggle, and if we get done at 11, we can slide an item up. It is quite disruptive to, I'll say, split an item, have a 30 and 30 minutes. So we'll be watching time because we do want to maximize the time for the commissioners.
Yeah, I just didn't want an hour and a half or an hour and 45-minute gap in there. And I realize I appreciate staff's flexibility on this. And certainly if we'd have to go past 12 o'clock to finish up that item, I don't think that's a problem either. Again, I just don't want an hour and a half lunch break.
Thank you for that. And what we'll do is do a time check at the end of the meeting and see where we stand. So that's kind of been our historical approach. So I appreciate the efficiency that you're proposing. So thank you, and thanks to staff in advance for any flexibility. With that, I'm going to close this part of our work session, and we will reconvene for our board meeting. Thank you. See you